goodbye. For a cancer patient, that word has two very different meanings. That's why when we've done everything we can, we do things nobody's done before.
I did it, Mom.
At the Christ Hospital Health Network, we collaborate with Dana-Farber Brigham Cancer Center to offer next-level care, developed by the world's best minds. Treatment that could change your odds. Or maybe the world. The Christ Hospital Health Network. Everything it takes.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 799, Realistic Goal Setting with Matt Kasee.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Hey friends, what's up? Thank you for listening to the Pound This Podcast. Before I get into this conversation all about healthy goal setting, realistic goal setting, talking about New Year's resolutions with Matt Kasee, I want to talk about some things that you might have on your mind with it being the end of the year and us coming up towards January, if you're listening to this around the time that I've released it, of thinking about healthier habits in the new year. Or even if it's not, you're not listening to this anywhere around the new year and you're like, hey, I need to switch some stuff around and I need to create some healthier habits. We talk about in this episode about having the tools, how about having coaches, about how coaches have coaches and having other people help you along your journey. And a couple of those people that can help you along your journey, one, Sarah and Team Fit With Me. If you're looking for somebody to help you learn more about nutrition, macros, help you if you need help with like programming exercise, especially if you have gut health issues or hormonal issues, she can help you walk you through all of that. Plus, don't worry, Sarah will keep you very accountable. And so if you're looking for somebody to be a great health coach, she works virtually. She can work with anyone, anywhere. Then check out teamfitwithme.com/poundthis, and you're going to save 10% off of month one of all packages and plans if you're looking for a great virtual health coach. If you are in the Cincinnati area and you're looking for some help with food and nutrition, Clean Eats is the jam. So I know I've been meal prepping for around a decade and been cooking myself, which I love to do, but it's also very nice to have someone else do it for you. And that's what Clean Eats has been doing for me. I go to the Newport, Kentucky location, also in Westchester, there's a location. And not only just for if you want to get your whole week's worth of meal prep, which is what I do 21 of the fresh meals, but you could do grab and go, the frozen meals. You can just stop in for the cafe. What's really great is just even if you're like, hey, I'm going to have a busy day tomorrow, I don't have time to prep something out, you could just go in there and grab some fresh, healthy meals. All the calories and macros are listed on the side of the container of the frozen ones. Plus there's pizzas and they sell protein powders and there's just a lot of healthy options because, as you know, most healthy food is not convenient, or most of the convenient places don't have a lot of really great healthy options, but Clean Eats does. So if you're in the Cincinnati area, go to Westchester, go to Newport, or you could see if there's a Clean Eats location near where you live. Right now, though, let's talk to another person in Cincinnati, and that would be Matt Kasee. Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine, returning guest, Matt Kasee from Trilogy Fitness Systems. What's up?
Hello, Amanda. How are you today?
Good. I like that I'm wearing Christmas jammies and you're wearing a unicorn that is deadlifting t-shirt.
Yeah, it's my beefcake rainbow unicorn shirt.
So where would one purchase a shirt like that at?
So this is pretty amazing. I have two clients that purchased this for me, two former clients. They now live in New York. They went to a kink festival.
Oh.
And they were selling t-shirts and they saw this and they said, Matt needs this shirt. And then they brought it back for me. So
I mean,
if you're curious, that is genuinely where they got it.
This makes sense, but I never thought that like there would be a kink festival.
I don't know if festival's the right term.
Like a convention maybe? Like
something along those lines, yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, I didn't ask a question about that side of it. I just knew that that's where they got the t-shirt from, and I wear it with pride now everywhere I go.
I feel like that we're both the kind of people that people would see something at a kink festival. They're like, you know what? That fits them.
They'll wear this. They can't be embarrassed.
Yeah.
Let's put this on them.
That's awesome. So I know we're going to talk about like goal setting and stuff, especially as we're like, coming up here on the new year. But before I get to that, I want to talk about your amazing dancing skills that I got to witness with the Cincinnati Dancing with the Stars. You're a celebrity dancer and raising a butt ton of money for Make-A-Wish Foundation. That was amazing. How did you feel about that whole experience?
It was pretty fun. The best part, I think we set the record for most tickets sold. So we had like 6 tables there. I think it was 65 or 67 people were there. Like just friends, family, people from the gym. Like it was really, really awesome. And that was by far the best part. Like just hanging out with, you were right there, right in the middle of our 6 or 7 tables. It was awesome. Yeah,
I got to say, I've told several people about this experience because I just think it's so amazing that, you're a personal trainer and you own a gym. And most people, like, you just think of like this fitness community, not so much as this huge like celebrity culture. But here you are with this massive amount of people, and we're in this corner in this ballroom just raging out for you. And like, it was just such a neat moment of being like, wow, how much you've really impacted people in the community here in Cincinnati, that this many people have like just been in your orbit, have been to your gym, you've helped change their lives, that are spending $100 a ticket to help the charity that you care about and to come out and support you. Just how you've supported people through health and wellness. And one of those moments I thought was really highlighted, and I tried to record it, and I was just too late on it, was like whenever everybody was done dancing and they started playing music for like, so they could do the tabulation, which really meant everybody go buy more drinks at the bar, was they played Carly Rae Jepsen, which is your jam. And to watch like all of these tables, like all of these Trilogy tables, everybody jump to their feet and like literally like rush the dance floor and like in support of you is like, wow, that's just like so cool of like to watch like how much you've impacted people's lives through, your personal training, through your gym, and how many people are just like so happy and giving them moments of joy to be there to support you. I just thought that was just a really like neat thing to experience.
I legitimately teared up like 2 or 3 times that evening because of that. Like it was, it's so fucking cool to see like, like you said, like they hit Call Me Maybe, and literally every Trilogy person genuinely rushed to the dance floor. And I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah. And then when we were out there on the dance floor, we were just watching several of, your people from Trilogy like pick you up and like, bounce you around. And it's just like, wow, I'm like, that's just so cool. I mean, it's not that I've been to a ton of gyms. I've been to enough that I'm like, I can't imagine any other place like having this kind of like just like love and genuine reaction to like a gym community. And I think that's what so many people look for, especially like when you think of like a CrossFit community, or they're looking not only to work out, but to have like their people and like their crew. And I'm like, wow, this is the definition of that, of these people that are all here together and chatting amongst each other. And I'm sure plenty of people have like made friends with each other that they all met at Trilogy. And it's like, well, this is exactly what I'm sure the goal was for you of wanting to start a gym and wanting to, help people on their health and wellness journeys, was not only that, but create connections and community. And it's like, wow, this is the perfect example, I think, of like how you just like nailed it. And I think that's equally as important, if not more important, than the actual lifting of the weights.
I think it's more important. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with it. Of like, it's kind of fun. Like, selfishly, I think it's really cool. Like, I sometimes give myself a pat on the back because of that community, because it's such a buzzword that people throw around, kind of meaninglessly, that it's like that and gratitude. And you hear all these buzzwords that get thrown around all the time because they're buzzy. But like, do people actually do these things? And the fact that we've actually created this like super loving, engaged community that gives back and helps each other out, like does all these things, like it's the coolest thing that I've done by far.
Yeah, it's amazing. And your new space is super cool. And I haven't been there yet either. It's just like a bummer for me that where you're located is just in such an inconvenient space for me in my job and where I live, that I really would like to come work out at Trilogy. It's just like, it is just like in this perfect spot that's like really hard for my life. But like your new space, from what I see on social media, looks really amazing.
It's pretty cool. It's the mural. It's big. It's fun. It's bright. We have windows and stuff. So yeah, it's coming along nicely. About a month in so far.
So are you looking at, as a gym space, I mean, as we're coming up on the new year, which me working at the YMCA, and I haven't been at the Y during like New Year's resolution time and New Year's, like everybody is just like, get ready for the tsunami. It is like just bat crackers in this place the first couple months of the year, which I'm like, I understand. I'm like, my whole life changed based off of New Year's resolution. So I'm like, I get it. And I have no hate towards the New Year's resolution. So
right.
I'm like, I understand. So with that kind of in mind, does that impact you the same way? Or do you guys have anything like, any sort of like, I hate to just word the use challenges, but are any sort of like things going on for that kind of community building, knowing that maybe some new people are going to come in there that maybe have not had a gym experience before and are looking to kind of ease into it, et cetera?
That's where I fail as a business person in the marketing world. Ours is pretty steady year round. Like we've got some seasonal dips and everything like that, like anything, but we don't get a huge rush in New Year's just because we're this private little place that nobody really knows about still. Like we're just like this hidden little gem over in Pleasant Ridge now. So we'll do a couple more happy hours. This month we've done some extra classes for people. We'll probably keep doing that for the first month or two, just to also build more awareness to, hey, we're in this really new space in a new neighborhood. Come see us. But in terms of like the rush and wave, we don't really get a big wave or tsunami of people the way a YMCA would, which would be insane to deal with. We wouldn't be able to handle it.
Well, yeah, I'll see how it goes. I mean, I think it's exciting just because I don't know, like that's where I'm like, I understand when people go and complain of like people that, you know, typically live a healthier lifestyle year round of like, oh, the gym's full of too many people and they don't know what they're doing. Or I'm trying to like buy veggies at the grocery store and they're not there. And like, I understand there's frustrations but it's also like, I just think it's exciting of if somebody is choosing that as, I don't know, I like those kind of like goal points, those kind of fresh start like moments of like, it's a birthday or it's a New Year's or whatever, or it's a Monday, I guess, of like, those just are helpful to the goal setting in my brain. And I think everybody's different, that if that's what somebody needs to just be like, hey, I want to take care of myself in different ways, then I'm like, let them have it and give them the space to do it and figure it out without that kind of side-eye judgment that somebody is in a new gym space or somebody's in the produce section when they weren't before. Because otherwise it's so easy to be like, give somebody a bad experience and then be like, see, I was right. I'm no good at this. I don't belong here. And then just bail. And then that's something that could have potentially changed their lives in so many ways that you were just a butthole about because you were mad that they were on the treadmill you wanted to get on.
Yeah, 100%. Like if that's where I'm with you in that, where I don't get annoyed by the influx of people, like I think it's good. Like I want people to, same as you, I want people to do these things. And the side eyes, the frustrations, like, yeah, it should be it's kind of normal. Like I get it to a degree, but at the same time, like smile at the person, welcome them instead of being a dick.
Yeah.
And that person's probably then going to they're going to learn more. They're going to have better experience and you're not going to have the influx and wave. They're going to understand how to operate in a gym. They're going to understand how to do these things. And ironically, the people who get frustrated and complain and throw the side eyes don't know proper etiquette in the gym to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
And like, can I work in with you? Oh, this is my machine. I'm going to camp on it for 20 minutes. Like, oh, that's also not how it's supposed to work. Right. I mean, if people were just, nicer, it would go so much further.
Yeah. In all aspects of life.
Yeah. Novel concept. Can we just be nice to people?
Right. Well, you have so much experience in the health and wellness space. And I kind of want to keep this goal setting conversation too, like, health and wellness and fitness, of being a trainer and owning a gym and working with other trainers and working with so many people. And also like you yourself in your own life, like, what do you think are kind of the key components to creating a goal in a realistic way that you're actually going to accomplish it?
So the the running cliches, right? The things that people all probably heard of, the SMART goals, the process goals, like those things are the keys to it. So SMART goal being, you know, it's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic or relevant to your goals, and it's time bound. That kind of allows you to have a purpose and some parameters to it versus I'm gonna lose weight. I mean, it's this big, vague, nebulous thing that doesn't really mean anything, or I'm going to work out more. What is more, right? I'm going to eat more vegetables. What is that, right? Versus I'm going to have a vegetable every day at lunch. Perfect, right? It's measurable. It's specific. It's probably attainable. So it's these things where by taking kind of these SMART goals, we can measure it, we can track it. And then for the process side versus, you know, I want to lose 10 pounds. Great. That could be a fine goal, but we also can't control that at all.
Yeah.
We can control the process. We control the things to do it. We can say, I'm going to get more sleep, or I'm going to get 7 hours sleep a night. I'm going to eat a vegetable at every meal. I'm going to work out 2 to 3 times a week. I'm going to get 5,000 steps a day, right? Like there's things you can specifically control and measure for the process. And that will get you to the outcome goal of lose 10 pounds. But you can control the daily things. You can't control the outcome. And I think that's a hard thing for people to realize if they focus so much on this outcome versus what can I control today? What can I do that's going to push me towards that? How can I track that then?
And I think also not only that of not controlling the outcome, like keeping in mind that you don't let the outcomes like crush you either, where it's like you might have like all of this movement, like specifically like weight loss, because you're making these different changes, where you might lose a lot of weight in the first few weeks and then it kind of like levels off to just not be like, oh, I'm going to give up now because I'm not seeing these results, like having patience, which is hard for me, of realizing like, well, these are good things and they're good things to do in general. If I'm just focusing on the weight loss, then I'm not focusing on just doing a good thing for myself. And then I'm going to bail in a month because it's not doing it the same way that it was doing it for the past 3 weeks. It's going to ebb and flow and change, and just like not getting discouraged by the waves of the outcomes either. I think that if you're just so hung up on when it's going quote unquote good versus when it's going slow, then that's going to just totally trip you up so bad, where if you just did it for 6 months, you're going to have, I don't know. It's just, I think it's just like we all like intellectually understand, especially when it comes to like weight loss, of like, you could lose 7 pounds and then you just like fluctuate for forever for some reason, or feels like forever when it's really 3 weeks or something. And then you'll lose a few more pounds and then you'll stay steady, or you'll gain a few. But if you like look over the course of 6 months, you have a downward trend and you're actually getting where you're going. So you are getting the outcomes you want. They're just not on this like timeline that you've written in your head they should happen in.
Yeah. And that's exactly, like, you can't control the timeline at all. You can't control the outcome. And by focusing on those things that are good for you, you can then start to see those things. Like if you're tracking how many serving vegetables you eat every day, or how much sleep you're getting. And some people should weigh themselves regularly. Some people should not, right? It's going to kind of also depend on where you are with these things. So that's another conversation about it entirely. But like, are you in a space and a time that you can do these things? Like, is the habit change, the goal, the whatever you're trying to do, is it achievable for you in this moment in time? Yeah. Like, oh, I'm gonna lose 10 pounds. I'm going to be tracking these 5 habits kind of thing. But if you have, a toddler, you have holidays coming up, you started a new job, you're doing all these things, you're like, that's a lot of stressful things. We're like, the moment for that should probably be kind of like, all right, I'm going to survive this wave right now, and then I'll get back to going later. When it's more consistent and calm, you can track those, like, hey, am I doing all these things? And if you're tracking the way, like you said, you'll see over the course of 6 months, that's the trend going the way you want to. And in those little ebbs and flows, you'll often see like, oh yeah, I'm not being consistent with my sleep. I'm not being consistent with my workouts. My steps are down. Like, you'll start to see these things. You go, oh yeah, I'm not controlling the things I can control right now. Every now and then you will be in a place where you just cannot control all the things.
Yeah. I think the point that you bring up, and I've talked about this a ton, I think the number one thing is self-awareness. And that's a hard skill. Like, at least it was for me, to really tune in and be like, what am I in this space right now? And what can I do? And what is realistic goals and what's not? And then I think that also from that self-awareness, being okay with changing the goals and not beating yourself up because, like, well, this didn't work, so I had to, like, just flip the tracks to something else. I must have failed at that. I'm using air quotes. You didn't fail. You're listening to yourself and your body and your mental state of, like, what is doable for you right now and what's not. As long as you're being really honest and real with yourself and you're not just like, I don't feel like it. You know what I mean? Of like, and really thinking about, like, what are my goals and why do I actually want them? And really kind of mining down of, like, why is this goal important to me? And, like, if it goes down to, like, oh, it's because of what somebody else thinks about me, you're probably not going to really accomplish it, because it's not really coming from this authentic place of, like, you want this for yourself. Because when things get hard, because they absolutely will, like, it's going to have to come back. You're going to have to come down and mine this well of, why are you doing this? And if it's just very, like, frivolous reason, it's just easy to throw it away and not do that goal. And
100%.
And I know for me too, of, like, just changing goals, which I do all the time. And I used to give myself such a harder time than I do now. Like, so for me, learning how to swim this year. So, like, I've always been afraid of, like, deep water, and I couldn't touch, and I could just doggy paddle. So I took adult swim lessons at the Y, and my goals were, one, just to learn how to swim. And then I'm like, okay, I would love to join the Masters swim team here at the Y. And I'm like, that would be awesome. And I also just want to swim across an alpine lake. And so having a goal being, like, joining the swim team, as I'm learning to swim and I'm getting better at it and I like it, I have also learned that I like swimming for long distance, but slow. And the moment that I start going fast or try to keep my time like you do on a swim team, I panic and I feel like I can't breathe, and I'll just stop. And it's like, I'm like, oh, well, I'm listening to myself. Like, maybe that's not the best goal for me to have right now, is to try to get on the swim team, even though that was one of my goals. That's going to have to change, because as I'm going through this process, maybe that's not the best thing. That's something I'm really going to have to work through. And maybe I'm just a person that enjoys swimming laps on my own pace. And that doesn't mean it's bad, or doesn't mean I'm not getting as good of a workout. That just means, like, that's where I'm at right now. And I need to honor that. And I need to change what my goal is. And I think that so many of us get really, including myself in the past, get locked up and, like, no, I said this is what the goal is, and I'm going to stay here. And if I don't do it, and then it just ends up exploding in your face, I feel.
It explodes in your face. It creates this negative cycle that you're going to then start to despise swimming.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to want to do it because you're not having fun anymore.
Yeah.
And that self-awareness thing is huge. I mean, people rarely do things for themselves. Well, you know, back and forth, right? People do a lot of selfish things for themselves, but when it comes to, like, lifestyle changes and things like that, it usually does start with something superficial, right? Yeah. There's I want to look better with my shirt off, or I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to do whatever, right? And then when you start talking to people, it's like, oh, well, my children we're expecting our first grandchild, and I want to make sure I can get up and off the ground with them in 10 years. Mm-hmm. That's big. That's meaningful. So being able to have that deep why that you connect with, that is important, that's what's going to anchor you into everything. And then, like you said, having that ability to take a left turn and realize, like, oh yeah, this thing turns out is not for me, right? I don't want to time myself. It doesn't mean you're not going to come back to that. You might check off the Alpine Lake goal and be like, yeah, I feel better with it now. I'm more confident in the water. I did this thing. The timing doesn't bother me anymore. And you might come back to that another day.
Yeah.
Or you might not. Who cares?
Yeah.
But, like, and those things, it's like being flexible with this stuff is so important at the same time, because life and circumstances will change constantly.
Yeah. And I think it's so hard, because it's like, I think that we have this narrative of, like, when we think of, like, goal setting, or we think of New Year's resolutions and stuff like that, they're like these big goals. They're these, like, harsh edge goals. And it feels like, I think for a lot of us, not to speak for everybody, but having this like, oh, I'm just going to have a vegetable at lunch every day, like almost feels like the vibe of like, that's weak sauce. That's not going to do anything. That's not going to change anything. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no, that ultimately will change everything. You just got to give it some time to breathe and some space in it. And I think that, I mean, I didn't make this up, but I love this quote so much, is that confidence comes from keeping promises to yourself. And it's like, even if that promise is, I'm going to have a vegetable at lunch every day, is that going to make you lose 100 pounds? Like, and just from doing that alone? No, like, you know, like just realistically, if you're, you know, just think about the rest of how you spend your time, but ultimately it could, because if like you promised yourself you're going to do this thing because you wanted to, and you wanted to keep a promise to yourself. And I can speak to this through my own journey, that 100% works, of like, wow, I'm really doing this. I said I wanted to, and I can do this small thing. Well, what else can I do? And then it just starts compounding of like, well, if I said I wanted to do this and I did it, now maybe I'll walk a mile a day too. But it just like, I think because we're in this instant gratification world, that it's so hard to be like, give yourself like the time and space. And even like I see these TikTok videos, which I'm not knocking on them, but people like just right now, people are like in January 2022 of like where they were and then where they are now, like how they've lost this massive amount of weight and they've done all this stuff. And I'm like, that's awesome. But that is a short amount of time. Like that is like, I'm like, I hope that you've made lasting things and you just didn't starve yourself for a year and you just did all this hardcore stuff. Cause I have 100% been there before. And then you lose all of it and been like, I'm a badass. And then and then it just creeps back up and your habits kind of just go back to where they were because what you were doing was unsustainable. And then getting back to the place that was your original starting place after you've already quote unquote done the thing is massively hard to turn around from. And it's really heartbreaking.
It's like the psychology side of it, right? Like having those failures, you then have your self-talk of, oh, I can't do it. I've tried before. I failed. I always fail. I always fail. I always fail. I always fail. Now that just repeats in your head over and over. But it's because you've been trying to, you know, race an Indy car or play basketball against LeBron James, right? Yeah. Like you're taking these things where like, if you're operating for easy, you know, like at a 1 right now, you have to go to a 2.
Yeah. And
you have to let that breathe for a minute, right? That's a perfect way that you said that. Like let it breathe, sustain that so you know you can do it, then take it to a 3. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to go from a 1 to an 8. And we just can't maintain that because we're used to operating at a 1. Like we have to take this dial and slowly dial it up because you're actually right. Like that. I think it was a James Clear quote that the keeping your promises to yourself.
Okay. Yeah, probably.
Like it is 100% correct. Like you have to change that narrative. And the only way you do that is by having this snowball effect of wins. Mm-hmm. And the only way you get to that operating at a high level, whether it's a performance side, whether it's swimming, whether it's weight loss, whatever the goal may be, it's by this compounding effect of these small daily things. And then I had a couple months ago, I recently hired a guy to take over my nutrition and workouts for myself. So last year or so, I just punched the clock. I'm like, I like RDLs, I like rows, I like farmer's carries. I'm gonna go for a walk with my dog. That was all I was doing all the time, just kind of barely, not putting a whole bunch of effort in.
Yeah.
His whole thing is like, he helps, I'm 36. He helps like people who are 40, like 40-year-old dads basically get in shape. I was like, well, I'm almost 40. I just got married. So a dad thing's possibly going to be around the corner. Like I should prepare for these kind of things. So I hired a guy to take me from being a 36-year-old, essentially single guy who eats Chipotle and Skyline all the time to like, all right, I don't want to be as chubby. I want to work out harder. Like, what do I do? I hired him. And it's the same thing, right? It was wild. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I can get back to meal prepping. I've done it before. I can do it again. No problem. I do this professionally. I tell you what to do this. I failed it for like the first 6 weeks. I was like, 1 day is great. Second day is terrible. Third day is great. Fourth day is great. Fifth day is terrible again. Yeah. And it took me several weeks to kind of get back into some semblance of a routine.
Yeah. Oh God, I feel
like,
that.
Yeah, like it's really hard. And like it's hard for people like us who have done this and do it. Like imagine somebody who doesn't have that skill set or that coaching ability or hasn't done it before. Like it's overwhelming to think about to a degree. So there's little baby steps, and building that confidence is huge.
Yeah, and I think, well, we're all just so hard on ourselves too, including myself, which I think was, for me, like going into health and wellness is a full-time gig. Into 2020, I mean, that just mentally wrecked me, because then it just felt like, for me, like, oh, well, this is your job now. Like, you can't gain weight back. You have to be like this certain person, and it's like, but that's also not real life. And it just really jacked me up a lot. So I think it's really important for people that work in the health and wellness space being like, yeah, I have to hire other coaches. And even though I technically know how to do this, it's really hard. And it just to be like, for other people are like telling themselves like, I can't do this, or beating themselves up and think it's just you. Like, oh, you must be the problem. You just suck. Like, no, it's freaking hard. It's hard for people who do this professionally. It's hard for people that have already like done like weight loss or changed their whole physique or changed their whole life successfully. Is a lifelong thing that you need to rely on other people to help you through, and you're going to fail a ton. And I just think that, myself included, I think I've really softened into that a lot, because I do have like perfectionist tendencies. And even like going through my swim lessons, like even my swim instructors just kind of like, yeah, you don't have to be perfect every time. Like chill out and like be okay with like, it's sucking, like it's supposed to suck. And it's like, again, like, that, but you won't let yourself doing that. And I think that to tie that back into like the goal setting and resolutions and stuff like that, I think that is a huge thing that just trips us up, is just like, I should be better at this. Or at one point, like, and I get really hung up on this now, because before I did the health and wellness stuff, it's like, I didn't really have anything, like I had really big success points to compare it back to, because like that was just never my life before. But now that I have things to compare it back to, I'm like, well, when things were good, I was doing this. How come I can't get back in that same rhythm now? I was working out 6 days a week, and I was meticulous to the gram of my food. And like, that's where I was. And like, how come I can't pick that back up now? Like, well, because life has completely changed. I mean, we've just been through a global pandemic, just that alone, of like comparing yourself to this past version of yourself where things quote unquote worked, and trying to fit yourself into that mold of what you did before is all going to set you up for failure.
100% it does. And that's the wild thing of like, when you look at like, you go into most gyms, like the trainer career span is, I think, like a year and a half.
Oh, that's how long I made it.
Yeah, it's something, it's really small. Yeah. And if you think like most of them are like 22-year-old, 23-year-old, fresh out of school, like they're young, there's no responsibility. They don't really have a job yet. They're building, so they have time to do all these things. They don't understand what it's like to work with a busy professional or a busy parent or do all these things. And on the other side of it, but kind of what you said there, people's expectations of themselves, like, oh, I should be good at this. Why? Why should you be good at this? Yeah. You haven't done this. You haven't practiced this. Like, we have this weird thing where we're like, we should naturally be good and naturally be able to do all of these things. We're like, no, we're going to stumble and fall. Everybody needs coaches. Like, I don't know a single person in my circle of people who don't have mentors, business coaches, trainers. Yeah. Trainers have their own trainers writing up their stuff for stuff like, because it takes stress away from you. It holds you accountable. It does all the things that help you take some stress of it away. Mm-hmm. That helps you design a thing to meet you where you are. Swimming is a perfect example again, right? Like going from not swimming to learning how to swim. Your coach met you where you are and taught you how to do these things. They know your weaknesses. They know those things, like the perfectionist side. They're like, hey, calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
I have a guy who helps me with bowling because I'm a really cool guy that bowls in a league on Monday nights.
Yeah.
Where I was struggling, and he's like, relax. He's like, you're trying to hit, like, so fun fact, bowlings are made of a bunch of little boards that go down. Like, he's like, you're trying to hit this 1-inch board every time. He's like, you don't need to. So just hit that area. You're fine. And when I took a breath and I relaxed a little bit and I wasn't focused on perfection with it, I bowled like 40 pins better the next game. I was like, oh, wow. Coaches know what they're talking about.
Right. Yeah, you just need somebody from like an outside perspective, because we get so in our own head which can be a dangerous place. Like you just see it through a different lens than however. It's the same thing too. I think when people give like compliments or they, or if somebody comments on something and you're just like, I don't see that. And you're like, but people can see things that you don't because you just get in your own way. And I'm definitely really good at getting in my own way a lot. So I think it's to have like that, the people around you that you trust and you feel good about. And I will say, I think this is a whole nother conversation and I do want to have this. And I was thinking about some people I could record a podcast on this topic with, so not to go in a deep dive, but I also feel from my personal experience, it's also dangerous waters to share like things like a health and wellness journey or weight loss journey on social media, because I feel it really definitely breeds that perfectionism, because I think you're doing it for a level of accountability. But it's gone beyond just your family and friends. It's become like strangers are now following you. And then I think from personal experience, which is why I want to talk about like with some other people on this podcast about it, of like when you're doing that, but you're having these struggle moments, then you really terrorize yourself of like, no, it has to be perfect because I'm putting it on a public platform and other people are finding inspiration in it. And then if I'm failing, it tells them that they're failing too. And you just go into this crazy headspin where it's like you do it with the best of intentions to hold yourself accountable and share yourself. And then you end up, if you have those perfectionist tendencies, I think it goes into really harmful, dangerous waters of now you're kind of harming yourself and not listening to yourself or reevaluating your goals because you've put it on this public place and you feel like you have to attain or be this person that you put it out there. And if you gain any sort of weight back, then, I mean, I've seen so many posts from so many people of these, like, I've gained weight back, including myself. I've gained weight, like, you feel like you have to justify that to people. And it's like this very tears, you're crying and it's like you're like this painful thing to share about yourself. Like you're this huge failure. And I'm like, oh my God, I just feel like that it can be, I think social media can be so amazing and such a blessing, but it can be such a detriment too. So it's like, again, that self-awareness piece of your mental health before you start tossing all that stuff in a public forum.
Oh, absolutely. And the wild thing is like, social media is gross for the most part. And we've talked about this before, like off air, of like, we just want to have fun on here and put up dumb videos and like funny pictures of my dog and cats and things like that. Like that's all I want to use it for. And when you start tying in that, and you have like the perfectionist side, which is like, I can't fail these people. I had to have this perfectionist side. And then you have feedback from other people of, they don't see any nuance to it. They just see a post. And if it's like somebody's like body positivity, healthy at every size, somebody's like, you have these different perspectives that should theoretically all coexist just fine. Because when you look at their messaging individually, they don't combat each other. Like you can have healthy at every size. You can have people trying to lose weight to improve their health. You can have body positivity at any size. Like it doesn't matter. Like people can't look at somebody on the outside and be like, that person's healthy because they look skinny, or that person's not healthy because they look heavy. Like that's nonsense. But when you throw that perfection aside, you throw it on Instagram, and then you have people commenting and sliding into messages and doing all these things. You're like, how dare you try to lose weight? Or how dare you tell people that you gained 10 pounds? Like two opposite things.
Yeah.
That 10 pounds can be perfectly healthy. Who gives a shit? But like you're then getting attacked by people on different sides that look at one thing through one specific lens. And they then put their stuff onto you, which then feeds into that psychology side, like that negativity side for it. And it gets scary pretty quick.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's also like with any sort of goals, I mean, especially weight loss, because again, it's just, there's so much, it's just a sensitive, vulnerable thing. But like any goals, like even if your goal is like, I'm going to pay off my credit cards this year, like whatever your goal is, I think by you with the best of intentions, you put those things on social media. And again, it all depends on you and where your mental health is. And sometimes it's really great. But if it gets to a point where if you're like, I'm not matching those goals, but I threw it out there and now I'm terrorizing myself because I said I was going to pay off my credit card this year, and I found myself in $5,000 more credit card debt than I was in the beginning of the year, everyone thinks that I'm like this turd of a human now. Everybody knows that I suck. Everybody knows I have no willpower, that I just buy dumb crap. Now everybody sees it whenever I buy a thing. They're judging me of like, well, she said she was going to pay off our credit cards, but look at her buying like a bunch of Squishmallows. What's her deal? And so it's just like, and it's like, is that really going to help you achieve your goal? Like, I think it's just one of those things of having to have a hard conversation with yourself and self-awareness. And also I think if you've, and I found before social media, I did that on the radio. There were so many times I announced that I was like dieting on the radio and then felt like the worst human being ever when I didn't lose weight or gained the weight back, because I'm like, I feel like a liar. I feel like a liar to myself. I feel like I lied to these people that listen to me, that like I said I was going to do this thing and then I did it opposite, and they all like, they probably don't trust me anymore. And it's like, they're not, that's just human behavior. But you like write all these stories in your head of like, of what you're doing. I think that when you kind of share those things, so it's, I don't know, it's crazy waters to tread, but it's very realistic waters as we go into a New Year's season where people want to share those things. But also I just wanted to throw out the point that like really sit with yourself and be like, is that a healthy space for you to do that? Or is it better to have like a vision board privately in your bedroom? and is that more beneficial than creating a TikTok account to follow your goal that you could potentially not hit because life didn't lead you there? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what it's funny. So my wife and I were talking the other day. She's like, oh, like we didn't save as much money this year. I was like, well, yeah, of course we didn't.
Yeah, you got married.
What do you mean? Yeah, we got married. I expanded the gym. We both got a new car and we just paid for a honeymoon. I'm like, those are 5 really big expenses. So like, of course we probably didn't save as much money as we normally would have. But it's funny, like like she's very much perfectionist. I tend just to float along. Yeah. That's one of my superpowers. I just kind of like float along. I'm like, things are gonna work out. It'll be okay. And she is not that way. So she's like, no, it needs to be this way. What's going on? I was like, chill. Like next year is a different year. We don't have huge expenses next year the way we did this year. So it'll be fine. It'll be fine. But then again, if like you also, like, that's part of the coach, right? You need that outside perspective of somebody else to kind of taper that down. And on the flip side, she could look at me and say, well, you also bought like 3 Jordans and you bought unnecessary things for your dog and you did all these other things. I'm like, oh yeah, fair enough. Probably could have met in the middle a little bit somewhere, but like you need that external perspective, and then you need that self-awareness. Like if you're a perfectionist, don't throw it out for other people, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's your job or it's what you do, or if that's kind of a little motivator thing for you. But it's a hard thing. That's why I wanted that. That's why I hired a guy who specializes in guys who are about to turn 40 to put on more muscle mass.
Is this dude in Cincinnati?
Like, no, he's a Canadian.
Oh, fun.
From the hometown of Bret Hitman Hart.
Oh, I don't know.
Former professional wrestler.
Oh,
1980s,
is that how you found him? Is
Great.
through wrestling?
No, I didn't. He's like, oh, it's all worried for you. He's like, oh, Alberta. And I was like, oh, how about Bret Hitman Hart? And he's like, yeah, that's a deep pool. Not everybody knows that. I was like, yeah, well, not everybody's a giant dork.
That's amazing.
But yeah, those, that outside perspective helps, and it kind of keeps you from going into those things. And I think that's the big thing of like, have that awareness and have help.
Yeah.
Because people need the help.
Well, and I'd say too, I mean, this is a whole nother conversation. If the circle of people around you can't give you that awareness or aren't helpful or aren't supportive, like that's also a painful thing that you need to look at. And maybe like that turns into the new goal versus the goal of like, I'm going to get a 6-pack this year. It's like, oh, if I don't have the people around me to help me, encourage me, and they're actually like telling me this is stupid, maybe the new goal is to find a more supportive crew around me and hire, or if you have to hire them, or find coaches or find a community that actually like supports me and my goals. And those are the things that come with all this stuff that like don't get talked about as much, and because they're the freaking hardest of like how people come and go out of your life when you choose yourself.
Yeah.
It's very hard of like realizing like this person is not supporting me in my new life and my new goals and the things that are good for me. They support it. Like, how many examples have been of like somebody who like, just has their friends that they party with all the time. And you're like, hey man, I'm sick of being hungover. This is like kind of affecting other areas of my life. I'm going to chill out on drinking. And then you kind of look around of like, oh, none of my friends are really supporting that goal. They're supporting like, come on.
Yeah.
Just come get drunk. And it's like, that's not really like where I want to move into. And it's painful because that person didn't do anything wrong, but it's also just like, but they're not moving into this new version of you. And like, what are you going to let go of? The thing that you want for yourself or that person, or to let that person know that you're going this way. And if they don't want to come along, they don't want to come along. And usually those people don't come along. And
that's another James Clearism of like your environment will dictate your success and the habits, whether it's the people that you're around, the activities that they're doing, what you have access to food wise, what you have access to gym wise, like all of those things will really dictate your habits. So if the goal is to go back to what we were talking about earlier, like if the goal is to eat a serving of vegetables at every meal, but you don't go to the grocery store to buy vegetables, you don't have vegetables at your house, like you're not going to eat vegetables.
Yeah.
Because they're not there. You might have some chips there, you might have something else there, but like you have to physically have the things in your environment, and your environment will dictate your success with it. Because human nature will go for the easier option, whatever's there. If vegetables aren't there and your goal is to eat vegetables every day, you're not going to go out and buy vegetables on a Wednesday after you get home from work just because you need vegetables. Right? Like, if it's there, you'll do it. But the environment and people around you will dictate more success than anything else.
And just bringing up, I know we're both James Clear fans, that I think that would be, a really great way to start off. Because goals essentially are tied into habits. And Atomic Habits by James Clear is just such a great book. I follow him on social media also, but that it's just such a good book of like easy, digestible ways to change your habits in ways that like make sense. And I actually like asked him to be on the podcast and they said no. So I tried, but I would still like, if you're an audiobook reader or like an actual reader, I think that's like one of those books that's like a game changer into changing your perspective on how to build habits and create goals.
It is the best book on habit change. His social media stuff's good. He does a weekly email, the Thursday, the 3-2-1 email every week. It's wonderful. Like there is a little nugget in each one of those. You're like, oh yeah, that's really good. That guy's really smart. That quote's really great. But I mean, that book is so good. We actually gift it to every single new member in our gym.
Oh, I love that.
When they send up, like we send them a little welcome care package kind of thing, and that's in there.
Oh, that's badass.
Like, it is that good.
What else do you have in your little welcome package?
We put a little bit of swag stuff in there. We put a little welcome note to them.
Oh, I love
and
that.
If there's things that we like talked about, like in like our first assessment or first couple of sessions, I'll go into the book and we'll put a little post-it note of like, hey, you mentioned this chapter will be really good for you.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
with
that's awesome.
little personal touches with it. But I mean, if people haven't read that book and they want to start like making some goals and change some habits and everything, that's the number one thing they should do is read that book first.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that even as much as you think that you might know on that topic, like he can just bring up so many points that you're just like, oh, that's so simple. Why didn't I think of it that way?
We never think of the simple things.
Right?
We want to overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be complicated.
So if somebody is like, oh, dang, I want to get that book and this whole welcome package, then how do they, if they're in the Cincinnati area and they want to come join Trilogy, or are you doing anything? Does anybody get like the first session free or any of those specials so they can come check it out, all that stuff?
Yeah, we have like a 3-session trial package. It's usually 3 for $39, but if they say that they heard us here, we'll do that one for free. Just 3 sessions, little trial package of like, see if we're actually lying about our community.
Yeah.
This whole thing, we just did this whole ruse on the pod
We just
now.
made it all up. It's all lies.
It's all lies. Like he didn't buy the book. He made me buy the book for him. So
I went in there and he made me do burpees for 45 minutes.
Like he said he never does those.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we happy to do that. Like that's our little introductory trial offer, because one of the big things is that community side of like things should be the right fit for you. Not everything's going to always be the right fit. Not everything's always be the right fit at the right time. So that's an important piece of it too.
Awesome. So website, social media, all that stuff, pimp it out.
Oh yeah. TrilogyFitnessSystems.com. And then it's Trilogy Fitness Systems on Instagram, which is where we spend most of our time.
Yeah, I always have such an awesome time chatting with you, and I'm so happy when you come back on the podcast.
Thank you.
So we'll definitely have to chat more in 2023.
I'm in anytime.
AmandaValentineBites.com